a real treat at the present time. You know where you're located here. This situation, you're right on the edge of the Cootes Escarpment area, and the Ecopark for Dundas is just 50 yards down from us, and the work is being started on it now and well on its way. A lot of organizations take part in this over the years. We got the big ones, the cities in it. The university is part of it. The Royal Botanical Garden, the Conservation Halton and Conservation Hamilton are all big players, but a lot of environmental organizations as well, like the Bruce Trail Association is there, and the Hamilton Naturalist Club are playing a big role in that area. And then, of course, the Giant Rib is right there too. And of course, the other organization I'm involved with is the Rotary Club, and they're putting money into developing this area here now. Now, our speaker, I'm bringing him in here tonight to speak to you because I heard him speak maybe a year ago, and I was so impressed by him. Now, he's a graduate of McMaster, and I'm impressed by that. That's a good starting point. Originally from Niagara Falls, he graduated from McMaster University in 2013 with a Bachelor of Engineering and Software. And he is currently completing his Master's of Applied Science in the Department of Civil Engineering. And his focus in that area of his thesis is on intelligent transportation systems. So those of you that are involved with our city, take note of that. This is what he has to say. Now, he has been, I think he's been schooled by one of my very best friends, and that is Dr. Brian Bates from McMaster as well. And I noticed a lot of his ideas are Brian's ideas as well that he's come forward here. So I really want you to introduce you to Wade Genders here tonight. And I tell you, he's got a message for you, but really what I appreciate, he speaks for young people when he comes through. And you see that he looks to the future of what happens here, and he speaks for young people when he comes here. So Wade, it's all yours. Thank you very much.
These prizes are not for but if you get the drop.
Okay, can everybody hear me if I don't use the mic?
No. Yeah, right. Look at your demographic.
Okay, thank you for having me here tonight. It's a lot of fun for me to go and speak like this. So I'm here tonight to talk to you about the Cootes to Escarpment Ecopark system. And before I get to that though, I want to take you on a bit of a journey. And we're not going to stay in Hamilton, we're not going to stay in Canada, we have to go bigger. We have to go into outer space. So we have to use our imagination a little bit. So I have some graphics for those of you who might need a little bit of encouragement in that area. So we'll get to it. So this is a picture. It's known as the Extreme Hubble Deep Field. So this is the furthest back into the universe that human beings have ever seen. Some of these galaxies are over 13 billion years old. I like this picture because it gives me perspective. And I like it because it makes me feel insignificant. And I think that's important sometimes, is for you to recognize your place. And we need to recognize our place on this planet, because every single little dot in that picture is bigger than our entire solar system, bigger than our entire universe, or than our entire galaxy. This is our universe, sorry. So, with that being said, we'll get a little closer to home. This is our sun. For the past 4 or 5 billion years, it's been fusing hydrogen atoms together through nuclear fusion, producing helium. and it shoots electromagnetic radiation out across the solar system, and it sustains life on our planet. So our sun is very important. Now, we here on Earth are 150 million kilometers away from the sun. So astrophysicists and astronomers have given a name to this distance. It's referred to as the Astronomical Unit. So if you want to test an astronomer or an astrophysicist and see if they're worth their salt, this is what you do. You go up to them and you say, "Hey you, how far away is the Earth from the sun?" See? It's pretty good. Okay. So our neighbors in our solar system, we have Mercury, 4/10 of an AU away, Venus, 7/10 of an AU, and then Mars, further from the sun than the Earth is, at 225 million kilometers. And as you would expect, with Mars being further away from the sun than the Earth is, it's a lot colder. It's actually significantly colder. It's so cold.
How cold is it?
Okay, you gotta work with me here tonight, guys. We're not gonna have fun, okay? It is so cold that thank you. That the polar caps are not frozen ice. They are frozen carbon dioxide. And that's important to know. So we'll zoom in here. This is a picture taken by a US rover that was sent in the 90s. It's a pretty arid place, but I think it's an interesting picture. It's of a completely different world. So the Martian atmosphere, as cold as it is, it allows Mars to retain some heat. So to put in perspective, the unit of measurement for atmospheres is called the hectopascal. So on Earth here, our atmosphere is 1,000 hectopascals. On Mars, they only have 7. And even with this little bit of atmosphere, it can retain a little bit of heat. So on the best of summer days on Mars at the equator, we're talking about 0 degrees, a meter up, -20, 2 meters up, -40. So if we're gonna go, we're gonna need to pack some warm clothing. So let's compare the atmospheres by elemental composition of Earth and Mars. Mars is composed of mainly carbon dioxide, over 95%. And without these high concentrations of carbon dioxide, there would be very little heat on Mars. On Earth, the air we breathe, however, is of a completely different composition. So we have 78% nitrogen, 20% oxygen, and then trace amounts of other elements. But what I want you to focus on is the 0.03% carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. Now this may seem like a very small number, and in comparison to the other elements it is, but it is very important to take notice of. Now I think everybody in this room was alive in 1997. I don't see too many millennials or anything like that, but in 1997, that number changed. Rounded to 1 decimal place, it went from 0.03% to 0.04%. It's the rate. It's the rate that we're pumping carbon into the atmosphere that we, as a society, as a civilization, need to take notice of. If we do not heed these numbers will be our undoing. This isn't an opinion, this is fact. If we want to continue breathing and existing as we do, we need to be careful of statistics like this. So, that's it for Mars. Let's go to Venus. Venus is closer to the sun than the Earth is, and because of that, it's much warmer. It's so hot. It's so hot, solid lead melts. Just straight up, it just melts. So if you take your fishing weights, you're no good, you got nothing. The atmosphere on Venus is very, very dense. So remember, we have 1,000 hectopascals. It is 90,000 hectopascals on the surface of Venus. Standing on the surface of Venus is like having crushing tidal forces perpetually exerting just intense force on it. It's incredible. So this is actually a photo taken by a Soviet lander. It's one of the only spaceships that's actually made it to Venus. It only lasted an hour because of the harsh environment. If that isn't bad enough, it rains sulfuric acid. Corrosive acid rains from the sky on Venus. And it's so hot, the acid doesn't even hit the ground. It evaporates before it gets there. By all Western reckoning, Venus is a hell-like landscape. Now we need to be careful because we've learned a lot about Venus. And the reason Venus is the way it is because of something called the runaway greenhouse gas effect. And the culprit, carbon dioxide. High percentages of carbon dioxide exist in Venus's atmosphere. So if we do not want to become like Venus, we need to do something. So we come to our home, planet Earth. Now this photograph, you're going to see obviously Earth on the right, and then on the left you see deep space. But you're going to see a blue haze intersecting the two of them. And you might think to yourself, is the picture out of focus? The picture's not out of focus. That's just our atmosphere. It is so very thin. As an analogy, our atmosphere is like the layer of varnish on a globe. And the thing is, we all need it. If any one of us decides to keep living, we need this atmosphere. It's only 100 kilometers thick. So if we had an amazing car and went straight up, you would be in outer space in an hour. It's that thin. And the problem is, we need to share it with everybody. In the year 1900, there was 1.5 billion people on this planet. A little over 100 years later, we have more than quadrupled our population, and it is continuing to rise. Climate change is a real thing, and it is going to affect us whether we do anything about it or not. If we keep continuing the way that we are, things are going to change, and unfortunately, they're not going to be for the better. So, I've given you, a crash course in astrophysics or whatever you want to call it, I just talked about. So what does this have to do with the Cootes to Escarpment Ecopark? I promise you I'm getting there. This is all important. So, do we have any chemists or biologists in the audience? Because maybe you could help identify this formula for me. Does anybody? Just shout it out. Nobody? It's okay. So this is the chemical equation for photosynthesis. You take, or plants, take carbon dioxide and water, and then using energy in the form of light from the sun, produce glucose, and expel as a byproduct oxygen. This is very, very convenient for us. In fact, it is an imperative convenience. Because of plants, we can now breathe, and they continue to purify the air of the very thing that we don't want in the atmosphere. So, in summation, if you take every blade of grass, every leaf on a tree, every bush and every flower, and you add it all up, as a system of power, it completely and utterly dwarfs our human civilization. More than 6 times the power output. 130 terawatts is the total summation of photosynthesis on this planet. So we may think of ourselves as an advanced, developed species, but every piece of green that you see outside contributes to a system much, much larger than anything we've ever done. So, this is a picture of Hamilton, as I'm sure you've all you've probably seen something like this. Now, I've had the amazingly good fortune to go to school here, and I think that, unfortunately, for people who aren't from Hamilton, this is probably what they think of when the word Hamilton is spoken. Now, I'm not here to rail specifically against industry and manufactured goods and that whole side of our civilization, but I think that we, as a society, need to understand that there is a balance, and we are not abiding by the balance that we need to be with. So what if we could take an example from some other cities about how to strike a better balance? This is a map of Central Park in New York. And as I'm sure you're all aware, New York is a very populous city, one of the most populous in the world. And right in the middle of that urbanized area, they have Central Park, 843 acres of amazing green space. And I would argue that if you were to ask any New Yorker what they thought of Central Park and what it meant to them, it would be an intangible positive that they couldn't even put a price on. And I think that's an important lesson that perhaps we can take cues from. So how do we do that? The Cootes to Escarpment Ecopark. I think this is literally the opportunity of a generation. We have the potential to build over 4,700 acres, stitch them together thanks to the amazing work of all of these amazing non-governmental and government organizations. So we're talking about being spearheaded by the Hamilton Conservation Authority, but then we have the Royal Botanical Gardens, the Hamilton Naturals Club, the City of Hamilton, the City of Burlington, the Bruce Trail Conservancy. All these great organizations are willing to come together and put their land together in a way to make an amazing piece of green space right in the heart of southern urbanized, the most populated parts of Ontario. This is something that would put us on the map. The same way that people know Central Park is in New York, people would know that this is part of Hamilton and Burlington and Halton and all the regions around here. This is really an opportunity that we cannot pass up. So I've been up here yelling about, planets and climate change and the Ecopark and photosynthesis, but I know there are going to be people who are naysayers, so I have to make a better argument than that. I can't just tell you it's a good reason. I have to really make you understand why it's a good reason. So when I went to school, I was taught a problem-solving method called the triple bottom line. And what it basically does is it allows you to consider a multifaceted approach to potential solutions to a problem. So what would the social benefits be of doing something like the Cootes to Escarpment Ecopark? Well, studies have shown people who have access to nature and green space are generally healthier. They can go out and exercise, they have places to visit with family and friends, but there's also an intangible element that we've not been able to account for. So they've done studies where you have low income, impoverished areas that have high rates of crime, and if they plant even one tree, for some reason crime goes down. Now we haven't been able to figure out why this is, but it seems to have an effect on us, and it is obviously a positive effect. Environmental benefits, I think they're pretty obvious, but did you know the Royal Botanical Gardens has done a study, and if I were to ask you where you think some of the most biologically diverse areas in Canada are, you might be tempted to say Algonquin Park, maybe somewhere in BC, but no. Right here in Hamilton, the Royal Botanical Gardens and the surrounding areas, Cootes Paradise, have some of the most biologically diverse areas in terms of plant species. There is a real gem here in Hamilton that people don't often associate with Hamilton. Not industry, but nature, something that we can be proud of. And then there's the economics argument. Just like New York City is known for Central Park, we could be known for the Ecopark. And it would attract people here. It would attract entrepreneurs. It would attract young people who want to start businesses because they'd see that we really value our community. We want to build it up, and we want people to come and join us in building it into a great place. So, the Cootes to Escarpment Ecopark system. I just came to Hamilton I've been here for 7 or 8 years, so I've really only started to get involved in the last couple of years thanks to a professor at my university, Brian Bates, but the work has been going on long before I got here, so if you want to learn more, you can go to this website. We actually created a video, you can see it over there, but if you want to watch it online, just go to YouTube, type in Cootes to Escarpment Ecopark. There's lots to do. You can donate money, you can volunteer, you can just spread the word and have conversations with people and try to get them to understand that Hamilton really has something different and special to offer. So before I go, I want to tell you a little story to the many that I've told tonight. So this is a statue called a moai. And you only find them in one place on the planet. They are on an island in the South Pacific, on an island called Easter Island. And there's many of them. They're scattered across the island. Now, this island, Easter Island, was populated around the year 1000 by some Polynesians, and soon after they got there, their society started to flourish in the following centuries. And they started to create these statues, these moai statues, and what they represented was, in their culture, in their religion, in their mythology, these statues represent an homage or a respect to their ancestors. And they believe that if they built more of these statues, prosperity, good fortune, and good health would come to the inhabitants. Now, as you can probably notice, these are quite large, and they're very, very heavy. They actually weigh thousands of kilograms. So the people of Easter Island had to be ingenious about how they actually erected them and then moved the statues. And what they found out is that if they cut down trees and used them as rollers underneath the statues, they could move them easily. So shortly after they started doing this, they started to create more and more and more of these statues, which required more and more and more trees. And before they could even realize, they had completely deforested their island. This led to soil erosion. This led to no wood for fishing boats. So they essentially starved themselves of resources on this island in the middle of the ocean. Their society collapsed, completely and utterly. Within 100 years, they went from a population of 15,000 to a population of 2,000. Over 80% of their society died. And why? These statues were supposed to bring good things, but they brought the exact opposite. They had false beliefs, and it led them astray. It led to their utter demise, and they never recovered. To this day, if you go to this island, there are very few trees there, and it is because of something that human beings did. So, remember that picture I showed you in the beginning of the Hubble deep field? We are on an island. It's just a little bit bigger, but we are on an island, and instead of being surrounded by water where we can at least swim, we are surrounded by the cold vacuum of space. There's nowhere to go. If we get rid of all our resources, there's nowhere to go, and nobody's going to save us. There's a few more billion people on our island, so there's much more possibility for many things to go wrong. And I can't say this enough, we cannot be naive and disbelieve that this cannot happen, because it happened on that island, and it can happen on this planet. In fact, most civilizations throughout history have collapsed. Why should we be any different? We obviously show we don't know better, but the thing is, we can do better. Now, I'm not saying the Ecopark is going to save us. It's not, but it is a first step in a long line of steps that will get us to the right place. We need to strike a better balance between our built world and the natural world. And I know it's something that we can do. We are smart enough, we have the resources, we just need to put it all together. So I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank Bill Nye, because part of this presentation was his. And again, thank you for this opportunity.
As a gift, we would like to present Wade with a bottle of Tower Estates wine. Thank you very much for coming and speaking and inspiring a lot of us and telling us about what's right here in our backyard. Thanks. Okay. All right then, I'm going to do some thank yous then. We've got the draw prizes done. We were going to